It's the Sopranos Podcast, Season 6, Episode 6. Yep, I'm keeping that one too. It's the Sopranos Podcast, Season 6, Episode 6, and Home Before Dark. I got a second chance. Why shouldn't he? That's a quote from Tony Soprano in Season 6, Episode 6 of The Sopranos, entitled Live Free or Die. This episode is written by David Chase, Terrence Winter, Robin Green, and Mitchell Burgess, and directed by Tim Van Patten. So, I'm going to get this out there before we give the intros and our first thoughts. I did not care for this episode too much the first time I saw it. I liked it a little better now. I'll explain why. However, this is clearly not what we've been watching so far as I consider Season 6, 1 through 5 to be all-time classic after all-time classic. This is not that. This is a peace mover episode. This is a mid-season episode that positions people where they need to be in setup for what's to come. It deals with multiple different little plot lines and one big plot line. It's a peace mover episode. It's not a climax of anything. It's not a cresting of anything. And we'll talk about what I liked and didn't like. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
Live Free or Die. Definitely got the Robin Green, Mitchell Burgess humor on this one. For that's for sure. But thoughts on Live Free or Die?
Yeah, I gotta say I don't really care for this episode. I don't think it's poorly written or poorly directed or anything like that, and it's still amazing television on a series I adore and do now and always will consider the greatest television series of all time. Not an episode I really care about. I enjoyed watching it. I don't really like the episode. I just don't.
Yeah, it's not a big one for me either. I don't think I'd call it filler. That would be rude. As you said, Chris, I think it is a peace mover episode. There's some beats that I think are really good and very well done and short and efficient in moving some storylines along. I think particularly in the case of Carmela and a few things with Chris here and there, which is cool. They're doing some runner stuff, and the stuff with Vito, a lot of it is played for comedy. There are some really funny bits. There's some interesting elements to it as well. It's just not, as you said, Chris, it's not like a lot of the stuff that we've seen up till now in 6A. And without getting into spoiler territory, I will say that the storyline with Vito is not what will intrigue me in the remainder of 6A. A lot of other stories will be the things that propel me forward and make this season quite interesting and special. The Vito storyline is just not quite up to that par, and this episode unapologetically lays that storyline out. So it's not big for me.
It's unabashedly the A plot. And so if you're not into the Vito storyline for one reason or another, that's a huge chunk of the action here. My assessment of this is that it's not a good episode in the sense that you're not going to come away with it having learned something about strength, the theme of the last episode. You're not going to get these dynamic scenes and these amidst these colloquies of Eastern Western philosophy, Kevin Finnerty, Tony hanging on life and death, all the themes of materialism in the first episode, right? You're not going to come away with what was the theme of this episode. I don't really know. It's sort of all over the place in that sense. That said, as a collection of interesting, funny scenes, it works. And there's stuff in here that is good. There's stuff in here that moves the story along. And there's stuff in here that there's enough here to grab onto and hold up the intrigue to get you to the next episode. In that sense, it's successful. As an episode that I come away with on a top 10 Sopranos list, it's probably not even in my top 80, but not bad.
Is it possible that this is more of just what we would kind of call an issues episode? Right? Almost like a Christopher, where it's like there's a topic that maybe David Chase just wants to put out there and discuss it using the lens of The Sopranos. And in this case, that could be coming out. I don't know. If that is the case, I don't think it's that successful episode. I'm trying to imagine, with respect to the show, an episode or a version of this episode that I would like more. And that's a really selfish way to view media, by the way, but I'm doing it. I'm so tough. I don't know if there was something they could have done to make this more enjoyable for me or for viewers like me. Because what's funny is I like other stories that are like this, where someone has a secret. It could be about their sexuality, sure. It could be about something else as well. And they have to kind of suddenly escape their life and other things are happening. And it could be interesting. I just don't like the way it's done in this episode. I don't care for it as much, I think.
Well, let's talk about it. One of the themes that is explored throughout the episode is this idea of Tony trying to live his newfound peace and his new philosophy and different things that life keep, as he says later, picking away at it and gnawing away at it. And this is illustrated with humor initially right out of the gate with Tony trying to relax in his backyard. And you got the rattling AC going on. He gets up, adjusts it, and it starts rattling again. He's just trying to relax in his beautiful yard on this, what looks like a gorgeous spring or summer day. And he can't seem to relax. Vito's with his Gumar. They haven't had sex in over a year. It's the blood sugar, right? He's giving an excuse why he won't go out with her, and she's fed up. She leaves. So we're coming back to that, but he's hiding out somewhere down the shore, probably. And Tony, in a direct follow-up to the previous episode, is following up with this Rusty hit. They're going to be killing Rusty, and it's Chris's job to arrange for a tailor to supply the scissors, in this case, the veiled language for the weapons. And Chris's attitude has changed. It seems that Tony's little trick at the end of the previous episode worked. Chris has come around to it. The more I think about it, it all points. Now it makes sense, right? And Tony also gets an apology out of Perry. He is firmly back in charge. What he did seems to have stuck, at least in the immediate sense. Some more time has passed. He's maybe not fully where he was, but this is a little bit more familiar territory and energy for Tony outside of Satrial's in this segment.
I believe the term from this administration would have been shock and awe. Right? Incredible display of strength puts everybody back in line.
Yeah, there's some good long arc storytelling here. Coming back to the Rusty thing, Tony, as you guys said, being much more firmly back in charge. The expert gaslighting of this goofy kid Perry is great, and it's a pretty short scene.
Mm-hmm. As long as you realize. Chris and Murmur are at AA. Thus far, I find myself intrigued by Murmur and want more of him. I like this actor. I think
I like him too. Yeah.
I think no spoilers, but I hope Murmur is around for more of season 6A because the little bits of screen time, there's something about this actor that draws me to him, and I like their relationship. Shout out to my hometown of Clifton. This guy they meet outside of the AA meeting was showing up to be able to get through. I think it was a sister's. Some family event that was being held at the Red Robin in Clifton. That's 4 minutes from my house. So
is that still there? Is there still a Red Robin?
Still a Red Robin, wow, right off Route 3. Yep.
Put it on the Sopranos tour.
And then this guy is loosely connected with this character Sal, who spotted Vito in the gay bar in the previous episode, and this is the propelling incident for what's to come. It is now out there, and Chris and Murmur are going to race back to the Bing with this information. I want to note Chris's human frailty makes me sick sometimes line. I thought I got a good chuckle out of that.
Yeah.
But they race back to the Bing. So far, I'm with this. I think the reaction here, the jokes, the immaturity, the gossip, the pick a little, tuck little, cheap element of this whole sequence at the bar where Chris is relaying the story and Tony smirks at the motorcycle outfit. But we're cruising along here, and Let's see how many gay jokes we can get into one episode, right? There's let's take this in the back. That's what Vito did, and at which point Tony dismisses Murmur.
Right. Yeah. And thankfully, again, I don't know how much more of this I'm in for. I was already kind of over this stuff in the previous episode. Listen, some of these lines are admittedly funny, and these guys are ultimately funny characters, and these scenes are enjoyable.
Well, and this is what they would say. To be fair to the writers, this
it absolutely is what they would say. It is just to a point it becomes tedious.
Yeah, there's I think what I do find interesting about the scene as it progresses is that, and there's other examples of this later on, is that it's actually a bit more awkward than I might have expected. I might have expected more, as you guys said, the gay jokes and everything, but Patsy says he doesn't fucking care,
yeah.
actually. And later on, without too much pushing, Melfi gets Tony to essentially admit the same thing.
Right.
Some of the stuff seems a little too much. Like Chris, of course, the posturing, Chris saying, I knew all along, which is total bullshit.
Right.
None of them knew anything, and you could tell from all the reactions that they didn't know anything. Similarly, Chris later seems to try too hard. I don't know exactly why, maybe because he's moved away from the business and wants to establish some bona fides in it. But again, like, I'm sorry to use the terms, but he says, I want to kill the fat faggot myself. Something trying too hard and something in them actually not caring too much. I did find it interesting that so much of their reaction is awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was nice to see, and I know it's later in the episode, that Tony still is kind of socially more liberal. We saw that a lot even in his coma recovery. Patsy doesn't seem to care, but then he's kind of forced to care, because then your own sexuality is then called into question.
Right.
It's very much a part of these guys. It's part of this time. It is just, I sort of lose interest at the end of each one of these scenes. I don't know how to put that better.
Well, Jordan, maybe you're a flambe.
That's it. He got me. You got me, Chris.
Oh,
yeah, I like the scene in the back of the Bing where they're because it's new to these characters, and it's fun seeing them react to this news that has been placed many episodes ago. So it is a payoff in that sense. But I like that Patsy of all people, Patsy is the coolest with it. It mentions I could care less, basically, and then doesn't fucking say word one about it the rest of the episode. It's great. Carlo, but we're getting a sense where everybody is. Like, Paulie is just in flat out denial and ready to start killing people over it until he finds out it's true. Carlo is immediately Carlo Gervasi. He's immediately one of the more outspoken, drag him behind my car right now. Terrible. Right. Chris is there.
There's a range across the
guys.
Yeah.
It's a healthy range. Not healthy in the sense that it's what you want to see. Healthy as in broad, as in a lot of different perspectives are covered.
Right. Yes, and you get the sense that you have Patsy and Tony who are maybe a little bit more open-minded about this, and then the guys like Carlo who are just absolutely not.
Mm-hmm. And again, for guys who are so judgmental about the homosexual lifestyle, as they might call it, Paulie is very big about sticking things up people's asses.
He says that a lot.
He threatened Jason Barone with it. Stick this up your ass, pull the trigger, and he says it again here. If it were me, this kid spread rumors about it, he'd have something up his own ass, and it wouldn't be no cock neither.
And listen, Paulie's done a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, this guy spent a lot of time in jail. Who knows what he was up to in that time?
He's a friend of ours. He's married with kids and a Gumar. There's a lot of little jokes. I at this point I've heard them all, and we've seen the scene a bunch. Nobody's got AIDS. I don't want to hear that word in here again. It still makes me laugh. I gotta confess that one got me.
Yeah, I like that one. I like when Carlos says, that don't mean anything. Elton John was married. And Silvio says, yeah, I think Rock Hudson too.
Cut to Meadow with a family from Afghanistan, refugees from Afghanistan, Muslim family. The headscarf, the rink. Meadow is working at this law center, and more 2006 social issues in this one.
Again, yeah, just kind of reeking of an issues episode. It's fine. It's it is what it is.
But Meadows going on about the civil rights and Bush era politics and post 9/11 crackdown on it was not a great time to be a Muslim, particularly in the Northeast United States. And Tony, of course, giving a very predictable response with the violin, AJ laughing. I like that Carmela admitted she voted for Bush. This all felt real.
What a surprise.
This all felt real. And of course, Tony, there's so many scenes in this episode that, despite the fact that the episode, it's not one of our favorites, Paul and I still quote back and forth to each other. Anytime a heated political discussion happens, it's not beyond one of us to go, you ought to chill out about some of this.
Very true. I thought there was something to that moment.
Yeah.
Tony struggling a bit, maybe. Meadow says, you don't relate to black people clinging to logs. Again, very timely in the issues of post-Hurricane Katrina. But Tony had related to those people. A couple episodes ago, he was talking about the Katrina victims, and there was a universality to his perspective. I don't know. There's like some kind of struggle happening here.
I just find it funny, and I actually, we don't need to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but as someone who considers myself in the political center, I find myself in Tony's situation a lot. Tony's like too liberal for the mob guys and too conservative for his Columbia University daughter.
Right, of course.
I've been in that position.
But in that way, as a moderate, everyone finds something at least a little relatable about what Tony has to say, his perspectives. So that is kind of a good thing.
As someone who shares a lot of Meadows, I guess, left of center politics, I will say this is not a way to talk to people. It's not a way to talk to people like this is all a con and you're falling for it because you're idiots. Yeah. That is not a way to convince anybody.
Yeah. Tony, this conversation seems to get Tony ruminating a little bit about Islam, Muslims, and he goes to Satrial's and he pops the question to Chris. This is our once an episode touchdown on Ahmed Muhammad. Although Tony gets their names wrong, of course. Fazul and whatever.
Oh, Jesus.
Do you think those guys could be, I don't know, Al-Qaedas? And Chris's fucking response is just hilarious. First of all, one of them, Muhammad's cousin, is a government interrogator in Lebanon. So, no, he couldn't possibly be a terrorist. And then, of course, the... he talked about the Danish comics, more topical. There was a big riot over some comics that I think they depicted Muhammad. And so that's what they were referencing there, that some comics came out in Denmark that were had the prophet on them, and there was a lot of protesting, and it was angry, and so that's what he was talking about there. But of course, then he mentions the Springer Spaniel, the dog no terrorist would own. The Springer Spaniel. But it seems to convince Tony maybe Tony sees himself as a, someone involved in a violent criminal conspiracy who has a soft spot for animals. Who knows if that brings him comfort or dismay, but he drops the subject, at least for the moment. The Vito storyline progresses. Benny Fazio, who knows how they were fanning out searching for Vito, but Vito's a pretty hefty guy, even with the weight loss. I don't know that Benny Fazio is the guy I would have sent for the intimidation job, but who knows? Maybe they were trying a couple different locations, and Benny's the one who struck gold. But Vito gets the sense that the jig is up, gets in his car, speeds off, throws a rock, calls him a quote Fanuc, don't come back around here, and he's off. He's off to the races.
Vito's shirt either has sausages or cigars on it.
Does it really?
Yeah. No, that is all.
Gotcha. Visually, this next scene stands out to me. I love this act as a guy who's a fan of crime drama, film noir. The clandestine meeting in the rain with Corky Iannucci, the the tailor, quote unquote, who's going to be providing the hitmen with weapons.
Yeah, there's actually something cool with the weather there because I think in the Vito chasing scene, like the weather's getting worse and then it gets worse. And then of course we end up in a full rainstorm by the time we get towards the end of the episode. So, or not the end, but almost the end.
Yep. But we meet this character, Corky Iannucci. He's going to be handling the deal. He's going to be the intermediary between Chris and the guys coming over from Italy. Just a little note. I think our observant viewers would probably note that Chris paid this man in heroin, not cash.
Yeah.
And I guess this would be, well, not the first example, but one of the examples of the growing telephone hour kind of thing, like we saw in Irregular Around the Margins. This is supposed to be kept quiet. It's never kept quiet. You saw him standing out. Everybody knows immediately.
Yeah, and I love that Chris tries to deny it at first and almost defend it, and doing the thing that they did with Phil Leotardo in the wedding episode, which is to an outsider you poo-poo the whole thing, but then Chris basically is just like, yeah, you didn't hear you didn't hear it from me.
And then he gives him even more.
Right, yeah, exactly. Again, there are so many jokes in this episode that we don't need to go over them in detail, but I am going to mention the ones that still do make me chuckle, even though it is by the end beating a dead horse. Could be a midlife thing. Sucking a cock. That's an objectively funny way to end the scene.
Yes, it's funny.
This highly sexualized shot of this babysitter as Vito comes in back home, deliberate, of course, and he goes on, gets his money together, takes a photo, packing up. He's ready to lam it, and he hits the road. He's blowing his diet. He's just pounding these ribs in the middle of this rainstorm.
That was profoundly sad.
Yes.
Yeah, that did affect me. Him eating the ribs in the car, that got me.
Yes, I agree. Phil calls, the absolute last person he probably wanted to see name on that phone. Calls him on that drive. He chucks phone out the window. We're going to come back to that in another very funny scene later on. And then he hits some kind of fallen tree, a branch, whatever. But the point is, he's in Dartford, New Hampshire, pouring rain, middle of a storm. The car is fucked. He's got his poncho. He's wheeling his suitcase to the nearest bed and breakfast. How sweet is it? Perfect casting. This sweet lady who runs the bed and breakfast, by the way, like just this. And in fact, on that note, actually, I think everybody in this Dartford, New Hampshire setting was perfectly cast. I feel like it's possible. I don't know where they shot this. I think maybe they shot it somewhere in Jersey. I heard. I read, but
oh, really? Because it really does look like New Hampshire.
Yeah, no, that's what I was about to say. Like, it feels like they went somewhere and cast locals.
Yeah.
Vito's driving through this rainstorm, and he hits this branch. Presumably what felled the branch onto the road was the wind. The wind has carried Vito to this town, to this other world. He's literally carrying a rolly case. He's not himself. He's somewhere else. Like Finnerty, he's the more buffoonish guy. For Tony, this was purgatory. For Vito, is this possibly like a paradise, another chance? That's why I chose what eventually we'll set up as our pull quote. I'm wondering if there's some deliberate resonance here. The bed and breakfast that he goes to definitely looked like the Inn at the Oaks to me. So there's resonant imagery there. I don't know. Just a thought.
We titled this episode "And Home Before Dark," direct reference to the musical Into the Woods. In literature, especially in Shakespeare, right? We go into the woods to find ourselves. He goes through this storm, through the trees. On the other side is, as Paul said, it's a kind of a paradise. Is he a more authentic version of himself here, where he can be his true self, where no one knows him, though he does seem out of place? As in a fairy tale, he arrives in a hooded red poncho, a la Little Red Riding Hood. That can't be a mistake. And of course, as Paul said, he's carrying a case with all his possessions in it, similar to Kevin Finnerty. So we're left to draw that parallel for ourselves as well. I don't know what it's Dartford is the name of this town.
Yes.
I don't know what this is supposed to be. It could be paradise. It all feels very not real, or it feels too perfect or too good to be true. So you are, as you would be in a fairy tale, very suspicious of this place, because this place seems like, oh, everyone is super nice and there's just gay folks just hanging out and everything is fine. And it does have a very particular kind of beauty, the kind of beauty that only New England has. And I say this as a New Yorker. You travel far enough up and you're like, oh, things look different. Things have changed. I'm now in New England. And it so distinctly looks different from New Jersey that, no offense to New Jersey, Chris, it can really feel geographically different in a way that you're like, oh, right, other places like this exist that are, strictly speaking, naturalistically speaking, prettier than the part of Jersey that I live in.
Well said. I don't disagree with the thing you said. Paul, to your comparing it to the coma sequence, again, Tony's biggest personal commiserator on that trip was the guy serving him food. So even then, you have another little synergy there. The Johnny Cakes or the blackened grouper sandwich, right? Interesting. It's slow until the leaf peepers get here. Car broke down. He gets up there. Another person who, doesn't take the shoes off before getting on the bed this season. I don't like it.
I don't get it.
He does kick one off and just passes out before he even gets the other shoe off. And then we're coming back to Carmela's spec house. She's looking in the shed. Everything's been cleaned out. She confronts her father, Hugh. It's always great to see him. But they have a little spat here. Oh, Sarah Bernhardt. The highlight of this scene for me, even though it's a scene between Carmela and her dad, is they paid Carmela's mother to show up on set that day to come out in her robe and yell, "Carmela, where's my bud pan?" Just absolutely fucking kills me every time.
I love her parents. They're so good.
Yep. She got a day rate for that, to show up and do that. It's great.
Worth it.
I don't like seeing Carmela and Hugh fight. They've always been close. And it's okay. So it's about the spec house and all the stuff with my husband in a coma. I wondered if Hugh was mad at her because of what he saw her say to AJ a couple episodes ago.
Well, that's interesting.
And he's holding on to it. I don't know. I was just curious about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Carmela's dream of independence, which is very much tied up in the spec house, is being held back by seemingly the men in her life, right? Tony seems to not really care about leaning on the guy to give her the permits to move forward with building. And her father, who was the manager of this whole project, is not only not actively working on it, but in fact stealing the materials that would finish and sustain the jobs.
Yeah.
Really, the men in Carmela's life are getting her from moving forward in her own dream of independence.
Here's a blast from the past. A payphone calling the operator, calling the information, having them try your relatives throughout the state. That was just a little, I wonder. So I actually have something. I don't want to get into the specifics, but I have something going on in my life right now where I'm interacting with a bunch of Gen Zers, adults, age 18 to 22, and they just recently, at least the kids in this group I'm with, have started watching The Sopranos. They just found out about this podcast. I hope when they get to this episode,
God help them.
But they love the show. They love The Sopranos where they're at right now, and they think it's great. But I wondered I just wonder what it feels like for someone in that age to watch things like this and see a payphone. You know what I mean? Just you grew up. These kids had cell phones their whole lives. It's just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I have never had Johnny Cakes, but this makes me want to try them. I've never had authentic Johnny Cakes. Anybody here had Johnny Cakes?
No, I wish. They do sound good.
I've never actually heard of them. They sound great. I would have them immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, they look great. They sound great. And if those in-house sausages don't look too fucking bad either, I got to tell you.
Oh, careful with the in-house sausage there, Chris. Oh.
It all sounds pretty addictive to me. And, well, as Jordan said, Vito has emerged in this other space, and a lot of things have directly and indirectly just removed these connections to his other life. They can't find any of his relatives. The woman didn't want a tip for getting him the room right away. She was just a kind person. And Tony later will talk about the regularness of life dragging you down. But Vito marking that these two gay men, a couple, same-sex couple, comes in and they say, "Are we boring?" It seems like delightful. The regularness of life seems like it might be addictive up here.
Yeah, I long for this existence sometimes with all I got going on right now. But yeah, no, it's great. He's looking around in awe, just at like, wow, everybody's kind of just chill. There's nobody getting fucking killed around me right now. It's great. There's openly gay couple right there. They got this guy making me this delicious new food. So far so good. But to Jordan's point, I share the fairy tale like suspicion of all of this. It is too happy.
Well, just even like, and I know this is the point, of course, but even the guy who just like runs the place or is the cook is like really good looking, like just on top of all of that other stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and of course there's a point to that, but it's also like, this isn't real.
Yeah.
Like that guy in any other diner would be like, not that attractive, put it that way.
Very awkward scene. Silvio with Marie. By the way, I'm not sure if we mentioned it on the podcast, but this is actually Lorraine Bracco's sister who plays Marie. You can hear, if you close your eyes and listen to the voice, you can hear them related. I think they sound more alike than look, but this is Lorraine Bracco's sister. And Silvio is brought the blood, sweat, and tears tickets and trying to get a little bit of information about their love life, try to read her a little bit. She's not really biting. He's a loving husband and a wonderful father. Okay, well, you let him know I was here. And he heads back out to Tony. Silvio, the pimp. My business, I'm around a lot of women. That one ain't getting laid.
I don't know if I don't buy that.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
I buy that it's something Sil would say. I don't buy that he actually has the power to determine if a woman's getting laid on the regular.
Yeah, and listen, not to come after marriage or something like that, but actually, I imagine there are a lot of marriages, maybe even happy marriages, where not a lot of sex is being had. But I do know this. No man can come in from outside the marriage who does not know the partner that well and be like they're having sex or not. You don't know that.
Well, and also, you're not telling me that Silvio would be able to come to this conclusion if they didn't already know what they knew about Vito. Like, this wasn't even a question 48 hours ago.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that Silvio's the hookup for music and like, clubs, and he's got the blood, sweat, and tears tickets with the backstage passes. And
he would be. That seemed appropriate.
He's the entertainment business hookup. I like that for Sil. This scene is funny. I like Tony calling the Vito's phone and the road crew guy. Perfect. Talk about perfect casting. Oh man, what a fun scene to audition for. And then he probably didn't even know when he looked at the script who he was on the phone with, and then watched the episode and was like, "Holy shit, I was talking to Tony Soprano." I just like to think about it from the actor's point of view, but telephone tough guy, put Vito on the phone. What's great about this too, this is a fun bit of dramatic irony too, because if Tony had only not come on so strong with the bravado, he might have actually gotten some useful information out of this guy. But he had to come on. Tony himself was being telephone tough guy, and the guy that just takes the phone and throws it under the street roller. I like this scene quite a bit.
Yeah, very funny.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris, is that it's a dramatic detail that's really important. How threatened these guys seem to be by homosexuality that they immediately have to posture.
Yeah.
Even the lack of foreknowledge is somehow so weak that you have to pretend that you already knew.
Next little subplot, and that's the other thing with this episode, why I think it's there's a lot of different things going on, a lot of little subplots that are touched on. We have the hit, we have the stuff going on with Vito, we have now this Ange and the whole the silent auction, and Angie getting some money out in the street and being much more. This is a different Ange Bompancero than we saw a few seasons ago. Even last season, she was running the body shop, but was kind of having trouble dealing with Phil Leotardo and Tony Blundetto and that whole situation with the car. But this Ange has really come into her own. She's domineering. She acts like one of the guys at the dinner table. Oh, can we just wrap that up? Can we just let him cook? Just kind of calling the shots, and the other ladies are like, oh, okay. She puts in for $2,000. But we're going to come back to that. But another little comment that I think we should keep track of for future references.
Sure.
Artie,
and also something for Carmela to be envious of. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and Artie, Jesus, he's always interrupting, coming in with the full fucking fish. Hilarious.
Oh, well, coming in with a fish on a plate next to Angie of all people, and I think instantly reminding us of Big Pussy.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that. That's awesome.
I was like, oh, there they are.
Yeah. Angie was the person who was stuck in the grocery store handing out samples that got Carmela rolling with that thought process in season 4. Now, great Sopranos irony. The only other character I can think of even like it is Beansy, who seems to have made potato salad out of this shitty situation.
Yeah.
To now being the figure, as Jordan pointed out, of envy for Carmela.
Well, she's accomplished what Angie's accomplished what Carmela dreams of accomplishing, which is independence, really. Just being able to. But the irony, of course, is that this came from something Tony did. So it's like a double irony. It's very good. This therapy scene. Tony is grappling with this with Melfi. I find this interesting, especially because Melfi, what I like about this scene are the assumptions they have about each other. Like that Tony, of course, assuming that in her circle, quote, she must have a lot of gays and trans whatevers. And of course, and then and then Melfi comes back with, and a lot of people in your circle must have done jail time. There can't be strangers to male intimacy.
You get a pass for that.
There's no women there. But yeah, so this is interesting. This is more so than on a lot of the scenes recently. This acts as a Greek chorus, right? Because we hear what Tony's saying to the guys, we see what he's doing, but we don't really get a chance until this scene to really know what Tony thinks of all this. And so it's interesting in that regard, because we're actually going to get his genuine thoughts on this. And despite the fact that he quotes, as he says, Senator Sanatorium, of course, he means Rick Santorum.
Close enough.
But I like that eventually she gets out of him that he just kind of, in much the same way that Vito had to posture masculinity in a way that was uncomfortable for him, Tony has to posture it even in therapy in front of Melfi until she finally gets him to admit, God bless, I salute. I had a second chance. Why shouldn't he? And Melfi encourages it. Part of your new outlook. I salute it then. This is a big thing for Tony. And also, like, I don't have anything nearly like this, but being in a leadership position myself currently outside of this podcast, there are some things that you have to do or have to deal with in a way that you might not want to deal with personally, but because the people you represent or the people who are working with you or for you feel a certain way, and you have to kind of, so Tony is caught between a rock and a hard place where the guys he works for give much more of a shit than he does.
Right.
I do find it interesting that what makes Tony's position difficult is that, as you pointed out, Chris, the guys give more of a shit, and his position is basically untenable on that level. I do, and it makes for a good scene with Silvio later on. This scene is fun. There's when he says I'm a strict Catholic, I think he says, let's not forget I'm a strict Catholic, and I'm like, oh, how could we forget that, Tony? There's some fun meta stuff in here too, because I think she says, let me ask you outright, what is your opinion on homosexuality? I find it disgusting. Men kissing men, guys holding hands in the street. And he says, every TV show now, they rub your nose in it. Yeah. Literally during the episode where The Sopranos dives in to do an episode about a gay character. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I do think it's interesting that pressed Tony finally says, I don't really give a shit. Yeah, Tony, again, not unlike in the last episode, seems pulled in a lot of different directions. He says that it's a tall order because the regularness of life gets you down. Your family, your kids, what they need, one bad idea after another, just trying to work a cell phone is enough to make you scream. So he's inundated with all these things. And yet in the very next scene, there's a simple, clear, and warm quality to his scene with Carmela. And I really liked that he was able to share what he does with her.
Yeah, this is the highlight of the episode for me, this scene with Carmela here. He comes home from his day, and my busy beaver. She invites him down. No, I'm not quite ready for that. I think I tore something last time from tensing my muscles. So this is it's another sweet scene between Tony and Carmela in a season where we've had quite a few of them, and I just like that she's got the vitamin E for his scar. And he says to her, "You were right about my uncle, Carm. I brought it all on myself. You never once said I told you so." And then he shares his theory that he did it to prove he was a good guy and that his mother couldn't hate a good boy like that. So
That is all to Dr. Melfi's credit.
mm,
I wish he could have said that in her office,
mm,
but I'm happy he got there.
yeah. Yeah. That's big. And it's very well acted by these two. These two can do anything.
By the way, cut to that warm image of them lying in the bed together. To Rosalie April saying, "Imagine lying next to a man in bed for 15 years. You don't know he's fighting for the pink team." That's funny.
Yeah. Oh, this scene is very good, especially because Sharon Angela can do no wrong by my lights, and the idea of Meadow knowing something, and I like the way Meadow cons Carmela into giving the first information. But she comes in and they mention that Vito is possibly gay. And she just drops the Finn bomb on him. And this is really what we've been waiting for since the moment
Long
Finn
time
saw him at the construction site. Sharon Angela's aghast reaction is fantastic. The cat's out of the bag, Meadow. She even revealed that Vito has Finn all worried and scared about it. Tony comes in. Love that he's singing, sitting on a park bench. Fantastic comment. The cat's out of the bag, Meadow, and she shares it with him. And the next scene is Tony leading Finn into the back of Satrial's. This is dark stuff because it's funny because it's total. I mean, you want to talk about a fish out of water, but Finn in this room with these guys is just. Tony has got the tenor of grim death about him. Unfortunately, he's got some bad news. Throws the magazine aside, has them sit down and explain what he has seen. You get all the Dr. Yankum stuff, the Silvio with the.
Tim Van Patten did a really great thing here. I think when they sit down, Tony tells Finn, he says, "Don't be scared." And it cuts to a series of like the scariest shots of these guys ever. Just looking expectantly at Finn.
Yeah. Paulie and Carlo and Patsy, like, the nastiest, grungiest old fucking mob guys you could conjure in the back of a butcher shop.
Right, yeah. Don't be scared. There's about 150 murders between these guys, but you'll be fine.
More of the beautiful town, Dartford, gorgeous. The little row of shops was my favorite, but the waterfall's beautiful. The town green is beautiful. Yeah, like you said, Paul, the idea of a fresh start, second chance. I don't know. I'd have a hard time leaving this place if I had reason to nestle down in there for a while, at least write a novel or something. Cut back from that beauty to the back of the pork store. Couldn't be a more stark lighting contrast from these two locations. Lighting and color palette are things I look for, and you just got the red and the brown and the black of the back of Satrial's, and as opposed to the green and the blue and the white. Everyone is just looking at Finn, utterly disgusted. And then the disgust compounds when they find out that he was, quote, catching, not pitching.
Yeah, to them, I guess that's worse.
Far worse. Far, far worse. Oh, man. And again, like that's stupid on the level of Junior getting shit for going down on Bobby in season 1. Like,
right.
Yeah. Don't forget that was gay to them. So, of course,
Right. To them, oral sex with a woman is gay. Yeah, that's the level we're dealing with.
So what are you gonna do? We'll get him some help, get him to pay for some therapy. Oh boy. And then they drag Finn out of there. Tony buys him a nice sandwich. Christopher goes way over the top here. I'd kill him myself. It'd be an honor. put him down, cut off his piece of deal, and feed it to him. Honor for the family. Paulie's upset. How much more betrayal can I take? We can't. Bobby says, and again, we're back to the different levels of what to do about this. Bobby says we can't have him in our social club anymore. I mean, that much I know.
Oh my God.
To which Carlos says, social club, he's got to go. And then Bobby's like, well, yeah, I don't know. Like that's a step too far for Bobby. And Paulie, what do you got to think about? I actually like that Tony threw this back at him. Are you going to take care of his kids after he's gone?
That's right.
Tony's the guy who has to pay the widows and the kids, and that's a real consideration. And it shut Paulie up. It was because Paulie is nothing if not fucking cheap, right? So Tony's speaking a language Paulie can understand there, but there could be no mistake now. This is, as far as they're concerned, this is as much confirmation as they require to take this information and believe it. More tough talk from some ironclad Catholics here as Phil shows up at his cousin Marie's house and talks about Vito making a mockery of the whole sacrament. But he confirms to Marie that there's been confirmation he's spotted in a car with a man. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say much more than that. The details of it repulse me. The witness has no reason to lie. And we got to get him back here to do something about it. And that is no more menacing than out of the mouth of Phil Leotardo. There's no question what Phil is talking about. Coming back to the body shop, Ange is in the back with Benny and Patsy, and when Carmela comes in, they have to kind of do a Kay Corleone to her, get her out the door. We'll just wait outside the office for a minute. Pretty interesting. They're getting her supplies, airbags, whatever, and Rosalie lets it slip in the next scene that she's got some money out in the street. And
wow.
One of us, now it's like she's one of them. But that's interesting. The idea of one of the former mob wives getting her money in the game.
I love it. Cool angle.
Yeah. Carlo is getting bumped up to handle construction. Tony and the writing's on the wall with the Vito situation, and these old union construction guys aren't going to want to work with him. Tony mentioned that in therapy. So Carlo, he's respected across the board. He's done good at the ports. And then after they promote him, Carlo breaks the news to Tony that Vito's crew is apparently not willing to take orders from him should he come back. And Paulie especially, like Silvio saying, he's going fucking mau on the subject. But Tony actually gives the strongest pushback yet of the episode to Carlo here, which is that they just like the drama, like high school girls and others I could name. They just want to whack somebody, anybody. It's not their fucking decision who they work with.
Yeah, it's an organizational threat. No one gets to decide who they take orders from. That's Tony's call. So this is, he's well within his rights here.
Absolutely. Carlo frames it a different way. It's against what we're all about. It's a sin. He uses the word sin. Again, more religious imagery. These guys using, and this is unfortunately what a lot of politicians do in this situation, at least at this time in American history, was use religion when it suits them.
Mm-hmm.
I have no beef with religion. I think religion is despite a lot of terrible things, is a net positive on the world, and we could have that debate another time. But
sure, you say so.
But they evoke the imagery of Catholicism and sin to kill a guy over this, right? To suggest the murder of this man. So it's
this is the entire absurdity, right? The level of hypocrisy. It's condemning one as a sin when your whole life is steeped in other sins, right? Oh, but this one is worse. Says who? Fuck you.
Right. And then Tony drops a very interesting line on him. We alluded to it earlier, which is, Carlo, let's be honest here. We all know he's not the first. To which even Carlo has nothing to say back to that.
Do we think he's referring to anyone specifically?
That's interesting. I don't know.
Well, clearly Carlo's an older guy. These guys go way back. There must have been other people. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fascinating idea. I immediately thought of Ralph Cifaretto not specifically being gay, but having these quirks that they might not completely understand. But
Yes.
of course, Tony is referring to the whole of the mob, and how, of course, there have been guys in there who held this secret. It's just that Vito's secret was outed. What this scene basically points to is, I think, to use Meadows' phrase, the untenability of Tony's stop and smell the roses position on Vito. I think ultimately, because I obviously would like it to be a different way, but the way this world operates is the way this world operates. And it's Silvio who tells him. Silvio isn't like one of these old timers whose old school value system is informing what he says to Tony. He's informing Tony of what the practical implications of alienating some of his top guys are.
Yeah.
Tony doesn't want to hear it, but he knows. I think that Silvio's right.
Yeah. No, well said. Silvio does a good job being Silvio here, and Tony, harkening back to the first scene of the episode, he just wants to read his magazine and appreciate his daily gift. And Silvio and this whole Vito thing is just a noisy, rattling, a nuisance in the background for Tony that is not going to go away, not anytime soon. This guy comes back. You going to kiss him on both cheeks? Meadow is working or interning at a new law office. Seems to be doing white collar fraud. I love this. This felt real to me when she was the boss lawyer was touting all of her accolades in front of her, and then they get out the door and it's like Tony Soprano's kid.
Because that's what she's always going to be.
Mm-hmm. Tony's building up his lats, yet another activity he's trying to enjoy in his peaceful, beautiful yard, regain some of his strength, and more rattling, more annoying, more chipping away at his veneer. Carmela wants him to lean on the building inspector. I haven't wanted to push you because you've been sick, but I forgot. And she's frustrated, and he's frustrated being asked again, and just kind of waves her off and keeps doing his workout. And then Meadow and Finn have one of my other favorite scenes in the episode. First of all, I don't have a full, it's not one of my top 5 most intense high stakes in the show, how Finn and Meadow are working out, but I'm curious. So it's nice to have a good amount of time with them and see what's going on with them. And they have a good discussion, and I have to say, I'm right with Finn on this one. Oddly enough, I thought he was kind of right on here, and I think we're seeing an interesting thing happen with Meadow, where she's never been more together, never been more mature, but we're starting to really see, as she's growing into the woman she's going to be, how growing up Tony Soprano's daughter may have changed her trajectory and her ideas on certain things irrevocably. She's never going to be in the position Carmela's in, but perhaps being the daughter of this mobster has colored her way of seeing the world and changed, the way she is engaging with the world in a professional and in a larger sense. I really like when Finn calls her out at the end. We're in fucking Caldwell, New Jersey, and these guys are going to meet it out themselves. Thoughts on this scene between Meadow and Finn?
Well, I think we're seeing a little bit more of the erosion in their relationship, certainly. I always enjoy where we get to see more of Meadow's journey, so that's an interesting place as well. I think Meadow's role on the show is really interesting in how it evolves, because she's getting a sense of, I don't even know quite how to say this. I think she understands that things are not perfect in her father's world, and that world has its own corruption, but I think she stands up for it quite a lot as well. So she really plays both sides in a way that's always really interesting to watch and to listen to.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and this is a fascinating scene. This is a key scene in the episode and in their storyline altogether. Remember when we did unidentified black males and covered their story? Part of it was how they didn't know how to have an argument, and here they've evolved in some ways. But Meadow, I think the deal that she's made with herself, that she's not bending on her family, and certainly since what happened at the beginning of this season, she is all in as a loyal daughter to Tony. There's certain places she's not going to go. What's untenable is that Finn goes there. He's right, but he went there, and he asks these hard questions that she doesn't want to wrestle with, I don't think. Jordan was talking a couple scenes ago about the application of principle when it's in your interest. And I think Meadow's doing a bit of that. it's in her interest to talk about how these gangsters are victimized, and Finn pushes back, and she says that it's going to be okay. Like, no, let's talk about it. But I don't think it really is. I think what's untenable is that Finn is touching on this point, and if you want to join this family as an in-law, you can't be asking these questions.
Hmm.
That's what's ultimately untenable. Like you, Chris, I think Finn is right, and his application of principle is consistent. There's a term, argument against interest, that when you make an argument that's principled, but it's not in your own interest, that there's something commendable about that. Finn would have good reason to want to see Vito dead. It would be a problem gone from his life. But he knows that it's wrong to kill Vito for this reason. I do admire that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
100%.
Nice, Paul. Yep.
Very well said. And I really like the use of the word untenable because so much else also feels untenable. It's a good button on that scene, but it's a good button on the episode too. Tony's peace, his frame of mind is untenable. This lifestyle is untenable. It has dire consequences for those who are about to be killed by hitmen from Italy. It has dire consequences for those who are being paid in heroin. It has dire consequences for those who want to get into the real estate market with their family. It's just all of it is untenable, and dare I say, this peaceful, idyllic town in New Hampshire may not be tenable, as is laid out by the New Hampshire state motto: "Live free or die," which Vito glimpses as in our very last scene of the episode on the license plate. In his case, it is in fact a literal state of affairs. You either live free in New Hampshire or die. That is now the stakes of this situation. He heads into this antique shop, picks out the most expensive piece in the store. He's a natural, and we're out. Final thoughts on this scene and the anything else you want to say about Live Free or Die?
Well, I'll say in talking about the episode, I enjoyed it a little bit more than maybe just watching it by itself, but that actually is pretty typical when we are discussing the show. I always enjoy talking about it more than sometimes.
We enjoy each other. I certainly had more fun. I had more fun talking about Christopher that episode than,
yes,
100%.
I will say this. I've spent some time in New Hampshire, and New England in general can be a really beautiful place. There's so many areas north of Boston in the extreme northeast corner of the country that are all beautiful and filled with these kind of beautiful places, beautiful towns, beautiful natural wonders. But that is not Vito's place. He's not from there. Listen, I'm a New Yorker. I grew up on Long Island. That's always going to be my home. And there are some ugly parts of, this state, or where my relatives are mostly from, which is, mostly, New York and New Jersey, Brooklyn. You're here for maybe not what this place has to offer in terms of like natural wonders, though there's many beautiful things on Long Island, of course, just like there's many beautiful things in New Jersey. But I can't imagine Vito is going to find happiness in this new place, right? I think that's already been foreshadowed. There's something a little off about it. It's a little bit too perfect. And ultimately, he is not a creature of New Hampshire. He is a creature of New Jersey. He is a creature of gangland, right? I can't imagine him living a life where he gets to be free, because somehow that life is still not authentic to him. I think that might end up being the tragedy of this character. So I think that's my prediction. I haven't seen these episodes. I've only heard you two specifically kind of bemoan how this plot kind of plays out in a way that to some can feel a little unsatisfactory. I don't disagree. But I can see this happening in a way where it's just like, too good to be true often is. And as much as these little New England towns can feel idyllic, they are also can feel like they are smothering.
Mm.
Yes, it's well said. So, like established before, this isn't my favorite episode, and it, heavily features a storyline that I don't love. I do think a lot of the imagery, though, that Jordan's talked about, that we've talked about throughout the episode, is interesting, how it reflects back on the world of the show. And if this season broadly is about how Tony went through this extraordinary experience, and it's him trying to find a new path, possibly, as Vito also is on this new path. The challenges to Tony are very interesting to behold. It's fun. There's some great scenes in therapy and great scenes out in the world with him. So there's still something to the reaction around Vito that I think is compelling to watch. And like you guys, I really did enjoy talking about the episode. No, it's not my favorite, but The Sopranos never does anything that's dull to me, and it always retains a sense of humor. That's one of the saving graces for even a storyline like this, is I think there's still a lot of really funny bits.
Agreed. It's got that Robin Green, Mitchell Burgess humor. It's got it touches down on a lot. They're doing a lot. There's a lot of moving parts at this point, and they spent so much time marinating on some very big ideas in the first few episodes. You do need that episode that kind of just sets the board for the back half, and that's what we have here. Structurally, logically, narrative wise, we're putting pieces in position so they can begin their final descent toward the back half of the season. Yeah, some of the humor is a little heavy-handed, but it's not. I think a lot of it also works. There's some interesting moments here, some interesting scenes, some interesting developments. So we will see where it goes. But I can't believe we're halfway through part 1 of season 6 already, guys. This is crazy.
Crazy.
Next up, there's lots of different episodes we talk about. We talk about the episodes that not terrific, but they move a few pieces. We talk about the all-time classics, your top 10s, your top 2s, your top 3s. This next one is one of those I throw on when I'm looking for a good time.
Ooh.
And it's a fucking joy. It's fun in all the right ways. It features characters that I adore, and it spotlights characters we don't see enough of in a great way. So Luxury Lounge is up next. I am elated to talk about it. Much more excited than this episode. No disrespect to Live Free or Die, but I am ready to jump into Luxury Lounge. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And we will see you next time for Luxury Lounge.
Got myself a gun.